Hi, I'm Matthew Hutchinson, VCIO at Coppertree Solutions, and I'm here with Colin Shantz, our CEO, discussing the right time for an IT solution. Colin, when does a business leader know it's the right time for an IT solution?
Typically, people come to us looking for an IT solution after they've had some kind of an issue or problem that they face in their organization, whether it's a technical issue, maybe there was some downtime or a big outage of some kind, maybe some data loss, or it could be, just sick of dealing with all the little issues that seem to happen. Oftentimes business leaders will come to me and say, it shouldn't be this hard to run IT in our organization, and we're just, there's got to be a better way to manage IT. And really, when you dig into it, it typically means that there hasn't been a good strategy. Oftentimes, when I talk to business leaders and I ask them how they've been managing IT and how they've been operating in the last number of years, usually they'll when we dig into it, we'll find that they haven't had a strategy and they haven't been working proactively and doing all the things that they need to do. And so when we look at how we can help, it really starts with the strategy to say, okay, where are we today? Where are we going as an organization? What are our gaps and challenges in IT? And how can we develop a strategy that will get us to where we're trying to go? So as we look at developing an IT strategy, what are some hesitations that executives might have as they consider implementing a new IT solution?
Oftentimes, what we encounter is there's almost a feeling that it's an overwhelming task in order to take on a new IT provider and to work through the IT roadmap, the IT strategy process. Also, if they've been with a vendor for a long time, I oftentimes hear things like they're terrible, but at least they're the devil that I know. And that sometimes is a hesitation. And it is a big step. And also sometimes they fear risk. They fear something going backwards instead of forwards. And these are natural hesitations. Changing your IT service provider is a significant change to your business and also to your comfort level. It's one thing to be okay with mediocrity. It's another thing to let go of mediocrity and go for something much better. Mediocrity has a bad habit of sticking around. And so business leaders oftentimes are afraid of the change that's coming and need help understanding how the change gets implemented and how you can change your service provider and do it relatively painlessly and then get almost immediate gains from that.
Yeah, I often speak with business leaders that are frustrated, but they're also hesitant to make a change because they perceive that it might be risky or they think it's going to involve a lot of their time personally. And really, it doesn't have to be that way. When we actually look at the process of switching to a new vendor, it's typically not as painful as people believe it will be. When we come in and we onboard a new client, the first thing we do is we document everything. We go through and we look at every piece of technology, every piece of hardware, every piece of software, every vendor, every cloud service that's in use. And after we've documented everything and we've logged into everything and we know what we're dealing with, we can put together a strategy. And really, at the end of the day, it involves a lot of time on our side, but it doesn't really impact the client too much. It's usually far less painful than people believe it might be.
Yeah, during my initial meetings with a client, when we onboard a new client, I have an initial sit-down meeting, and the purpose of that is to me to explain what the next month is going to look like. Those meetings invariably start with a certain degree of fear and hesitation on behalf of the client. And at the end of that hour and a half conversation regarding how we're going to absorb your IT infrastructure into our methodologies and practices and what a roadmap is and how it's going to help you, that fear and trepidation in the first few minutes inevitably turns to excitement and energy and enthusiasm at the end of that meeting. That's in the span of 2 hours. We can change fear and hesitation into, hey, we can achieve things here. Let's just let these guys do it. And what they want to know is that there's a methodology that we follow in order to analyze your situation, to decide what a target state is, and then discuss how we're going to achieve it. So those meetings inevitably end with a lot of positive energy.
After we go through the process and things are going well and maybe we've ironed out some of the issues that they've been having with their technology, there's often a feeling of, why didn't we do this a long time ago?
Yeah. I've often been thanked for things that we consider to be normal. Making a strategy is normal. Having a secure environment that's stable these are normal things. These aren't luxuries that certain businesses enjoy. This is baseline things that IT should be providing to business customers.
So Matthew, how does Coppertree help organizations figure out when the right time is to make a move?
Well, we start with a conversation to better understand your business, to understand your current relationship with the IT services that you're getting, to identify any pain points that you're currently having, and really get an understanding of what drove you to the edge of making a decision. Once you become a client, then we go through the process of what we call onboarding a new client, and we outline that with the client to make sure they clearly understand what's going to happen in the next 2 to 4 weeks, for example. And that involves discussing the business's needs and analyzing what's already here, finding weaknesses that may be there, assessing the severity of those weaknesses. Not every weakness is an emergency. And then laying out and delivering a formal IT roadmap that is a strategy for how we're going to get to the successful target state that we've identified. When I outline a target state for an organization, it comes from the business leaders. It comes from, we want to be here. And then our homework, when we go back and we design and we work through the gap analysis on how we're going to get from where we are now to where we want to be, involves a lot of different components. The overall thrust of that is we've got some identified business initiatives that need support, so we need to do those. We have some stability issues, if we have any, that we need to address now to produce stability within the system. And we may have some security issues that need to be addressed as well. But what they want to see in that initial engagement is there's a plan that I'm involved in, that I'm driving as the business owner. I'm telling the IT department, this is where I want to be. And providing stability and providing security, those are critical pieces. But to a business owner, those should be the accepted norm. Of course I'm stable. Of course I'm secure. What I really get excited about is what changes coming down and what recommendations we can make and what actions we can take to help facilitate those.
So people often worry about the transition process. What are the steps that we take to make sure that the transition is smooth and we come out the other side with a good plan in place?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have an extensive process that we call onboarding to move a client from welcome aboard to the point where we're working a strategy together. We have a documented strategy together. And it begins with an initial meeting on my part where I lay out how the process works. It begins with one or 2 weeks of on-site work where we document what we have. And that process is so critical to find out exactly what you have now in terms of infrastructure. We go desk to desk and interview your staff to get their perspective on how IT supports their jobs. And that usually is a goldmine of information leading to that IT strategy. When users report constant issues with certain aspects of their IT infrastructure, that goes to the stability piece. When we uncover glaring security holes, that goes to the security piece. And when users describe what they want to be able to do, that's the real nugget of gold in an IT strategy. When end users tell me, it would be great if we could do this, and then that connected to that, and then this let us do this. Those are the notes I take that are going to be a part of that strategy that drives advantages and drives value to the business. Stability has to be achieved. Security has to be achieved. The onboarding process is really about uncovering opportunities to improve your business, and IT is just the tool we're using to do that.
I think it's often surprising to business leaders what things we all find when we talk to their users. There's a perception that they kind of know what's going on and they know what the needs and challenges are in their organization. When you spend the time and you talk to the users and you dig into how they work, I think we often find things that are somewhat surprising, I think, to the business leaders as well.
That's very true. When we deliver a formal roadmap, it's usually a 1 or 2 hour meeting, and I go over findings and we've already discussed the target state at this meeting. They already know that because they really define what we need to get to. But yes, when I go over recommendations or suggestions from users, they're often surprised. Sometimes there's a hesitancy on the part of a user to say to a superior person or organization, this is a terrible process and I don't think it's good and it can be improved. And sometimes it's just a matter of people creating solutions on their own to solve a particular problem to produce the results that their immediate supervisor needs. So my supervisor asks me to achieve a goal. I have no idea how to do it. I make a solution up on my own, which shows initiative and is not necessarily a bad quality. I make a solution up on my own. It becomes the standard or the norm that we're going to use. And then an outside person comes in and says, wow, that takes you 2 hours a week. That should take you 5 minutes a week. Or you shouldn't even be doing that because someone in another department does most of that work already. You just don't know that they have that piece of information in their section and you need it in yours. So oftentimes it's just because the time it takes to understand how IT supports different business functions is when you uncover these things. And you can't do that if you're trying to run a business, if you're trying to do sales or marketing or promotion or whatever you're trying to do. You need to make space, and that's what we provide. We provide the space to look at your business and how it interacts with IT and make recommendations. And they are often surprised, sometimes by the simplicity of the recommendations. All you need to do is this and this, and you'll get an immediate gain. And sometimes by the complexity of the recommendations, because it's a deeper understanding of how different people within the organization relate to IT and relate to each other that they won't get because they have a day job to do and they're not going to stop and interview their staff. It's one of those, a roadmap presentation meeting is one of those meetings where there's so many aha moments during that situation. And some of them are good and some of them are unfortunately bad if you discover that something isn't working the way you thought it would. But really that's the point of the process, right? If there's a weakness, let's uncover it. If there's an opportunity, tell me what the opportunity is. I don't know how to make something better if I don't know what's available to me to implement to make it better. Now that we've reviewed some of the key concepts of accepting or onboarding new clients and discussing the importance of an IT strategy, in a basic sense, how are your clients' lives better by working with Coppertree to solve their problems?
Ultimately, when I ask business leaders what they want from technology, they all tell me the same thing. So everybody says, I just want everything to work. And I want to sleep at night knowing that our risks are managed. And I want to know that we have the right technology in place to support our business. And that's really the end result of using Coppertree services. When we initially come in, we spend a lot of time looking at what you have, looking at your business, understanding your goals. We put that strategy to work and we say, all right, now that we know where we're going to make some changes and we're going to implement some solutions that will help you achieve your goals.
If it's the right time for you to put an IT strategy in place, start by contacting Coppertree Solutions at coppertreesolutions.ca.